Hello everyone, welcome to Jolly Molly TV. Today we're going to do another fun block in Kimberbell's Candy Cane Lane bench pillow / wall hanging / tabletopper project. And today we're going to be working on this adorable Christmas tree. It's going to be so much fun, and now is the point in the project where you get to decide if you're going to be utilizing the fairy lights like they have shown in this project, or if you're going to opt to do something more like hot fix rhinestones or crystals. And that's what I'm going to do. If you have watched my previous video series on Main Street Celebration, I did the same thing where I made it into a wall hanging and I opted to do the hotfix rhinestones on it. It was a little bit more practical for me than using the fairy lights, and that's what I'm going to do for this project as well. I'm going to bling it up with a lot of crystals and not use the fairy lights. So you need to choose if you want to use the fairy lights or not. We're going to get to a step in the process where we're going to do little stitch marks for the fairy lights, and at that point you'll have to know whether you're going to be using the fairy lights or whether you're going to opt for crystals. Okay, so go ahead and get your pouch system or plastic bag system that you've labeled the Christmas tree, that has your fabrics, the plain green here, the printed green, and your embellishment kit. You're going to get out the piece of cork, or if you're using your own stash, just get a piece of brown fabric that you can use for the trunk. And if you're going to follow along with the pattern I've designed for this cute tabletopper / wall hanging, we're actually going to be making 4 of these Christmas trees, all the same. So we're just going to show one today, and then your homework assignment between now and the next video will be to do it 3 more times with the same technique. But this video will be there for you, so you can just rewind it and replay it as many times as you need to feel confident in doing this Christmas tree. Okay, you guys ready? All right, let's gather your supplies and head over to the machine. Okay, we are at the machine. Now we're getting ready to start. We're going to do the Christmas tree block today. So I've gone ahead and taken my 8x12 hoop, and I've put a piece of Kimberbell's lightweight mesh cutaway stabilizer. It's like a poly no-show mesh stabilizer in that hoop. So we're ready to go. I have a full bobbin down below, white thread, and I put white thread in the top of the machine. And so now let's go to the screen of the embroidery machine. I have a Brother Dream machine, just for reference, in case you want to follow along if you have something similar to this. We're looking at the Kimberbell instructions for this project, and we're on pages 17 and 18. All right, so we want to look at page 18 because it's going to tell us that the square finished block size is 6.5 by 8.5. So let's keep that in mind when we add the design. Let's go to embroidery. I keep everything on a flash drive, and I've got it in a folder called Candy Cane. And we're going to go to the quilting backgrounds first. That square finished block size I just mentioned of 6.5 by 8.5 is what we want to add for the quilt design. So I've got 2 designs here. I want to scroll down and find the candy cane and the little mint, and then 6.5 by 8.5. That means I want to pull in the quilt design that is just slightly smaller than that, allowing for seam allowances, which is 6 by 8. So, okay, that's the one I want to bring up. You always want to bring up the design that is slightly smaller than the squared finished size of the block, because that way the quilt design will fit perfectly and won't be cut off on any sides. So if the finished block size is 6.5 by 8.5, we bring in the name of the design that's 6 by 8. So the screen shows that the design is 6.5 by 8.5, which includes the tack down lines around the outside. So this is a perfect size to fit this block. All right, so we're going to click set, and then I'm going to go ahead and add the applique design. If you don't have the ability to add designs on your machine, that's okay. just stitch out the quilting design first, then clear the memory on your machine and go back and bring up the applique design and stitch that out. So I'm going to go back to my flash drive, go back to Candy Cane, and now I'm going to go to a folder where I've put everything called main blocks, and we're looking for the Christmas tree. That's what we're going to work on today. Oh, this is going to be cute. We're going to click set. Everything looks good. We don't have to move anything. And we're going to click embroidery. So we are good to go. So let's go back to the hoop cam. And we're ready to start stitching. So I've already got white thread up on top. I'm going to put my foot down. And let's stitch out the placement line for the batting. Okay, so let's go ahead and lay the batting down. And here we go. Make sure it covers all of those placement lines. And put the foot down. And let's tack down the batting. All right, so let's take the hoop off the machine. Let's go over to the table and we need to trim away all this excess batting. All right, that trimmed up nicely. So now we still have white thread on the top of the machine, and let's put the foot down and stitch out the placement line for the fabric. Okay, so now we're going to lay the fabric down, right side facing up. And make sure you've got the back facing down with your fusible attached to it. And then I'm just going to center it. And I can actually feel the batting as well. So I know the batting is right there and right there. And the batting is right there and right there. So we are good to go. So let's put the foot down. Leave white thread up on the top because I want it to blend in with this fabric. Let's tack down this fabric. That's great. Okay, now for one of my favorite parts, we're going to stitch out the quilting designs. And because I've got white, kind of a tone-on-tone fabric, I'm going to go ahead and just do the quilting in white. I want it to be subtle behind the scenes, so I'm going to use white thread for my quilting, all right? So this is a 4-minute stitch out in real life. So let's stitch out the quilting stitches. All right, that looks great. Okay, now let's go to the screen for a second because we're going to talk about the next step. Now on Kimberbell's instructions on page 17, we are now basically at step number 1. We've done the quilting design, which is not included in the instructions. So now the embroidery machine is at this bottom tack down, which is basically the background placement line. Okay, if you have not done the quilting, just like we just did with the overall quilting design, then you could do this step and follow steps 1 and 2 in the instructions. If you've already done the quilting design, then you're good to go. You don't have to worry about this step. So we're going to skip this step. All right. So what I do on my machine is I go down here to the plus or minus on the stitch, and I'm going to move forward 2 times. 1 gets me past that, and then this is a tack down for the fabric, which we already did, and we're going to skip past that. And now we're at the Christmas tree. All right, so let's keep going. So now we're going to stitch the Flexi Foam placement line. Now, if you don't have the embellishment kit, or doing this from your own stash and doing your own embellishments, I actually have, let me go to the screen here, the hoop cam. I actually have a package of what's called Puffy Foam. All right, let me take the cover out here so the glare's not there. Puffy Foam is by Silky. Okay, and Puffy Foam is similar to Flexi Foam, and it gives that 3-dimensional pop to your projects. And there I have a pack here that comes in all different kinds of colors. Let's take it out of the package here so you can see it. Isn't this cool? And it comes in 2 sizes. There's a 2mm and a 3mm. And this pack is a 3mm pack. And I compared it to a piece of the Flexi Foam, and it is very close in size. So the Flexi Foam that's in the Kimberbell embellishment kit is approximately 3mm thick. All right. So I pulled out the green piece, and I'm going to use that for the background behind the tree. Redo. So I'm going to use this for the tree. It really doesn't matter what color you use, because we're going to be covering this up with well, for mine, it's like a turquoise green fabric. But I went ahead and just picked a color that won't cause any problems underneath. It's not going to show through. It will blend in nicely. So if you, again, this is a good option. If you don't have the embellishment kit from Kimberbell with the Flexi Foam, you can always get some Puffy Foam by Silky and use that instead. And I actually will have, I think I have 2 packages extra of this. I will have it on my Etsy website in case you need some of the Puffy Foam. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put a placement line first to stitch out the tree. And I'm going to go ahead and put in the teal green fabric that I'm going to be using for the tree up on the top of the machine. And we're going to stitch the placement line with this. Then we're going to tack down the Flexi Foam with this. So it will all blend and you won't see this underneath the Flexi Foam at all. So let's put the tree placement line color thread, whichever you're going to use, in the top of your machine. Okay, so let's stitch out the placement line for the Flexi Foam. Okay, so now I'm just going to take the hoop off the machine so I can get a better idea of how I'm going to line up my Flexi Foam or my Puffy Foam. So I'm just going to make sure that I am going to be over that placement line on the top for the top of the tree. I'm going to slide it to the left until we cover it nicely, and then I'm going to double check that I am good. I'm going to raise it up a little bit more because I got plenty of room down here. Okay, then I'm going to put the hoop back on the machine. Double check. We're good to go. And let's tack down the Puffy Foam or the Flexi Foam, whichever you have. Okay, so now that's tacked down nicely. I'm going to take the hoop off the machine and we're going to take this over to the table. And now what I want you to do is I want you to trim away the excess Flexi Foam or Puffy Foam away from the outside of this tree. Now be very careful when you do this. You don't want to snip any of the threads, but you want to get as close as you can, but you don't have to be spot on. This is going to have a little bit of cushion when it goes to tack down the fabric on the outside. but just get as close as you can without snipping, and we're going to trim all the way around the Christmas tree. Okay, let's go do that. Isn't that cool? Let me take a look at this real quick. Yeah, it takes a little bit longer to cut, but like I said, all you gotta do is get close enough to give it that shape, and the stitching will do the rest. All right. So now I'm gonna put a brown thread up on the top of my machine because we're gonna stitch out the trunk placement line. So let's put brown thread up on top. Alright, and let's stitch out the placement line for the trunk. Okay, so now we're going to put the brown fabric down for your trunk. Make sure you just cover those placement lines. And because you've got three-dimensional foam up here now, give it a little bit extra. Don't cut it off real close because it's going to drape around the foam. All right. So now we're going to use the stylus. Whoops. Put the foot down and let's tack down the trunk. Okay, now we're going to go to the table, take the hoop off the machine, and we're going to trim away the excess fabric around the trunk. Okay, we've got that ready to go back on the machine. So now let's put the foot down, brown thread still up on top, and let's do the satin stitches around the trunk. Nice. Okay, so I want to show you one thing here. On some of the satin stitches, the way it's stitched out, there's some little white showing in between here. Don't worry about this. What we're going to do is we're going to fix that when we go over to the table, and I have a brown Sharpie pen. I'm going to fill in those little areas that need some brown to fill that out. So don't worry about that, all right? Okay, so now we are going to put our green thread, or in my case, kind of a teal green, matches my fabric. We're going to put this thread in the top of the machine because we are now going to stitch the placement line for the first piece of the tree fabric. And the way that Kimberbell has this in the sample is they have the solid fabric first, then they show the next one will be a printed, then a solid, then the top is a printed. And these are my fabrics that I'm choosing for this tree because I'm making mine kind of a candy theme. So I'm going to be using this as my solid. It reads as a solid, but it has a very subtle swirl with some glitter on it. This will be my printed fabric, which will be for the second and then the fourth stage. So I'm going to do this, the teal color thread up on top, so I can do the placement line for this first piece of fabric. All right, so let's put the foot down and stitch out the placement line. Okay, so now I slide the hoop off the machine again so I can kind of get a good idea and I can see where everything is going to go. And I just place that fabric down, covering all the placement lines. And we're going to put a foot down. And now we're going to tack this down. But what we're going to do is we're going to guide and make sure with the stylus that we keep the fabric flat. This is going in and out of three-dimensional foam, and it will tend to pucker and to move a little bit. So I want to just make sure that the top of the tree stays flat. All right. So here we go. The main goal is that the top of the tree stays flat. All right. And then we stop. You can see it puckering a little bit. Not a problem. I'm going to switch to my left hand. And undo. See, there's a little wrinkle there, and I want to get that out. Okay. So I'm going to take this off the hoop, and I'm going to, with my seam ripper, I'm going to take out these stitches to here, because this is puckering now, and I don't want that pucker in the tree. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm going to go back to my screen, and I'm going to go back as many steps as I think I need to get around 20. I want to go right there. I went back 30. Go back to the hoop cam. So I'm actually going to start back in this tree section and then go back around. Okay, and again, the trick is to keep it flat. And don't worry if you have to take out stitches like I did. It's going to happen when you deal with the foam because it's three-dimensional. All right, so let's put the foot down and let's tack her down. Try to keep my finger away from the moving platform. There we go. Okay, we got it. See how nice that is? All right. That was the challenge, is just to keep this top part here flat. This will curve and buckle as it does, not a problem. But I wanted to keep this flat because this is what you're going to see in the future. All right? So you did it! All right, so now we're going to go over to the table and we're going to trim away the excess fabric around the side. Again, you want to get close to these stitches, but don't nick them. It's going to do a decorative stitch over the top, not a satin stitch, but a real pretty decorative stitch, which will cover the cut edges of this. Just get as close as you can without snipping the threads. Okay, let's go trim it up. Isn't that looking cool? All right, so now I still have that kind of an aqua green thread in the top of the machine. Going to put the foot down, and now let's stitch out the decorative stitches around this portion of the tree. Isn't that pretty? All right, so now I'm still going to leave that same color thread on the top of the machine because now we're going to continue and stitch the placement line for the second section of the tree. Okay, again, I take the hoop off the machine just so I can get a better view of the placement line. And if you have some fabric that you want to kind of fussy cut and put, you know, a particular feature in the center. If it works that way, you can do that. And see, this one isn't kind of cut that way. So we're just going to go in the middle. I could almost do that one, but not quite. Not because of the points. But I'm going to try to do, see, but then I'm short over here. So it's just going to go in the middle. And I'll try to do a little bit of each of the two in there. Again, we're going to have the same issue with this one. I want to make sure it doesn't pucker. So I'm going to slide it on. And then I'm going to use my stylus and my finger on one side. Just make sure you keep your finger away from the needle. It always goes this direction first. And let's tack down this fabric. Yeah, that one's a little bit easier because it's not really coming off the edge into all these three-dimensional areas on the bottom. So the first one is the hardest. All right, so let's take the hoop over to the table and let's trim away around the outside and get rid of all this excess fabric. Isn't that looking cool? All right, so we're back at the machine. I'm still going to keep that green thread up on top. And now we're going to stitch out the decorative stitches for the second section of the tree. Okay, now we're going to stitch the placement line for the third section of the tree. The green thread is still up on top. Okay, so again, I'm going to take the hoop off the machine just so I can get a better angle on what is going to go where. I kind of want that. There, let's do that. Okay, again, straighten it up a little bit and use your stylus and your hand, or you could tape it down, and let's tack down this fabric. Alright, you're getting the hang of this. So now let's take this over to the table and let's trim away this excess fabric. This tree is really starting to come together. All right, so now let's leave the green thread up at the top of the machine and let's stitch out the decorative design on the edge of this section of the tree. Okay, one last time. Now we're going to do the placement line for the top of the tree. Green thread still up on top. again, I'm going to slide this off the machine just so I can see what type of design I can get. That won't be centered. That won't be centered either. But that would be kind of cool to have, but it'd be kind of off kilter. So I don't know. Let's see here. That's the bottom. We could do this. So it would be like this. You can kind of test it out. That looks kind of cool. It doesn't go all the way up because I need the point. That would be kind of cool to do that. Yeah, let's do that. All right. Oh, but see, I'm going to be short over here, so that doesn't work either. So we're just going to do it centered. So it's going to get a little bit of that, that, and that. And see, I can turn it on its side and kind of audition what it's going to look like. We'll just do like that. Yeah, that way it will cover everything. All right. So audition your fabric, get it in the position you like it, and let's tack it down. Okay, you know what comes next. Take the hoop off the machine. Let's take this over to the table and let's trim away this excess fabric. Okay, we got one last part of this tree. Green thread still up on top, and now let's stitch out the decorative stitches around the top of the tree. Isn't that pretty? I love the way it turned out. Okay, so now I'm going to take you to the screen for a second because I'm going to be skipping the next step. The next step has to deal with fairy lights. Now, if you're going to be putting the fairy lights into this project, you'll want to stitch these out. These are the eyelets that will tell you where to poke your hole on your tree and will allow the support to be around the fabric where you poke that hole. These are the eyelets for the fairy lights. If you're not going to be doing fairy lights, you can skip this step like I am. I'm going to be embellishing mine with crystals and some other fun ornaments and stuff on top of the tree. So I'm going to do the plus and minus key, and I'm just going to skip this step. I'm going to use the down arrow, and it will take me directly to the next step. Okay, fairly easy. Let's go back to the hoop cam. Now, this step is going to stitch the berries onto the tree. And I think I will do what they suggested. I'm going to put white berries on this tree, but you could change your berries up. Berries can be any color. You can do them red. You can do them pink. You can do them purple. You can do whatever color goes with your color scheme in this project. So you can pick whatever color thread you want for these berries. I've got a loop. Make sure you get any loops out like that with your stylus. It'll loop around this foot and will break your needle. So get those loops out. So put whatever color thread you like up at the top, foot down, and let's stitch out the berries. Very cute. Now mine left some jump stitches between. Yours may or may not do that. They're real easy to just pick up and trim. Real fast and easy. You can tell they kind of just pull out. So I'm just going to trim these up real fast. And then you get to put the snowflake colored thread up in the top of the machine. Because this is the last step that we have to do now, is stitching out the 3 snowflakes. And then this block is done. Look how far you guys have come. Right? Right, look at that. Okay, so now we've got that done. I'm also going to put a new bobbin down below because I've got some left, but I don't think that's enough to get through 3 pretty intense snowflakes here. So just to make the process run smoother, I'm going to put a new bobbin down below, slide the hoop back on the machine, and now I'm going to put my snowflake thread up on top. And if you remember from the light pole, I'm using a variegated thread, which goes from a white up to a light blue to kind of a aqua, almost like a baby blue, light aqua thread. So this is really pretty. So I'm going to put that in because it will make literally every snowflake unique. No snowflake will be the same, which is kind of the way it is in real life. So I'm going to put that in and let's stitch out the snowflakes. It's about a 7-minute stitch out. In real life, I have a double loop. Get that loop out. Warning, we do not want broken thread and broken needles. Okay, so let's stitch out these snowflakes. So pretty. We have a Christmas tree. Don't you love how the variegated thread makes these snowflakes all different, all unique? Love it. You did it. All right, let's take the hoop over to the table and let's finish up this block. Just love the way this turned out. Just gorgeous. All right, so we are good. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get a brown Sharpie out of my Sharpie collection, and I'm just going to lightly touch up the couple areas that were left white that should have been stitched so it's more complete. That looks good. Colored Sharpies, embroiderer's best friend. All right, looks good. Let's go ahead and take it out of the hoop. All right. Let's get that out of the way. And then we have a gorgeous Christmas tree. So now we're going to trim this up. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to get my cutting mat out because we're going to trim this up the old-fashioned way with a ruler. Okay, I have a Coulter Select ruler, which I love their rulers. This is a 3x12, but it's really nice because on the back it has that no slip grip. So when it comes down on it, it doesn't want to move. And I love their rulers. Not affiliated with anyway, I just love their rulers. Okay. So these blocks are going to be squared up to 6.5 by 8.5. So I want to double check that. I look at the stitch line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5. And this is going to be 8.5, 8 and 8, 16.5. Right on. 8.5 by 6.5. And how I know that, number one, is the instructions tell me to do that. But number two, this stitch line, this outer stitch line is also magically the trim line. Okay? So I say, okay, it's going to be 6.5 by 8.5. I can go by the stitch line for the first cut. And I'm going to look and place my ruler just to the left of that first stitch line. And my motto is, can I see the stitch line? If I can see the stitch line, then I'm good to go. So just to the left of that stitch line, take my rotary cutter and very cutly trim, very slowly, very cutly. Very cutly trim. It's a new phrase. I coined it myself. I'm going to very cutly trim. All right, so that is spot on. So now I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Nope, too far. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5, which is right here. Can I see the stitch line? Yes, I can. Going to line it up with the ruler. I can see the stitch line. We are good to cut. Now this is going to be a little bumpy because of the foam, so I'm going to put more pressure on this side of the ruler so it stays steady. And then I'm going to use my new term, cutly. Now I'm going to trim the stabilizer. Sometimes the brain just is way ahead of where the mouth is. Love it. Okay, so I'm going to trim this up again. This one's real easy. Look for the stitch line. Go just a little bit outside that stitch line. Can I see the stitch line? Yes. So I cut it. And then I'm going to make this 8.5, 8 and 8, 16.5. Line it up. It will again wiggle a little bit because of the puffy foam. So once I get her all lined up, can I see the stitch line? Yes, it's just underneath the ruler. And I trim it up. Isn't that gorgeous? I got a little boo-boo on the side. Not a problem because that will end up being in the seam allowance too. So that's got a little sliver. Not a problem because I will line it up along the edge. Isn't that gorgeous? Love it. Love it, love it, love it. So now, if you're doing the bench pillow project, you only need one of these. You are done with the tree and good to go. If you're following along with the pattern that I have given you in the first video, then, here's a little straggler thread here, then you need 4 of these trees. Okay, you can do it, just do one at a time, and you will magically pop out another tree. This tree I used a baby blue for the berries. Look at that. So this one was white, this one was berry blue, and then I went and did number 3, and I used a lavender on this one. And see, some of these I was able to really kind of fussy cut and make unique trees with the pattern fabric. And then number 4 is a tree with pink berries, because my theme of colors is pink, purple, like a Cinderella blue, and then the white. So I did berries on my trees to match my color scheme. You can do anything you want. All right, so now we have to trim these up. So let's trim up one using Kimberbell's orange pop ruler system. And I'm going to actually just grab the ruler in the rectangle set that is labeled 6.5 by 8.5. It's a perfect size because that is the size of the block. And if you put it down around the block, you can actually see the cut line. All the way around. All the way around. It's perfect. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is line it up to where we're happy. And actually, we're going to change things up a little bit here. I'm going to get out my rotating mat because that'll make life a little bit easier when it comes to turning this block. All right, so I'm going to line it up, turn it just a little bit, put my fingers down, make sure it's lined up. Take my rotary cutter, I'm going to go into this little notch, and I'm going to go up against this ruler all the way to the other notch. Take it down, nice and slow. I can actually turn it to this one. Can I see the stitch line? Yes, I can. And I trim it, and I come around to this side. Can I see the stitch line? Yes, I can. And then come around here. Can I see the stitch line? Yes, I can. And we're good. All right. So turn this back around. And one little thing. Voila! We have a tree. I have a little thread here I want to trim. Make it all beautiful. And there we go. Isn't that pretty? That was fairly easy too. Okay, let's do it again with the orange pop ruler. Let's take the block number 3. Do the same thing. Line it up. I think the 6.5 by 8.5 blocks are easier than the 4.5 by 8.5 because you have to use 2 rulers to line that one up, and this one you only have to use the 1. Okay, everybody's good? Can I see the stitch line? Yes, I can. And we're just going to go notch to notch. Turn it. Don't move the ruler. Can I see the stitch line? Yes. Turn it. Can I see the stitch line? Yes. And last but not least, can I see the stitch line? Yes. All right. See how much easier the orange pop rulers make the squaring up process? Look at that. Dun, da, da, da. Number 3 done. Okay. So then let's go back and let's use a regular ruler on block number 4. Okay. Goes out of the way. Here we go. And we're going to use a regular ruler. I am going to go to the far left, just a little bit past that stitch line. Can I see the stitch line? Yes. And trim up my excess stabilizer. Okay. Then I'm going to go to this side, and I'm looking for 6.5, which is right here. Line it up with the mat. Can I see the stitch line? Yes, it's just below the ruler. Trim it up. All right, a little bit. There we go. That way. Now we got 2 more sides to do. The first one's easy. Go to the stitch line, Go just a little bit, a smidgy to the left. Can I see the cut line? Yes. Or should I say the stitch line? And now we're going to go 16 and a half, sorry, 8, 16 and a half is my mark, which is an 8.5 inch block. Can I see the stitch line? Yes, I can. And away you go. And there's block number 4. You did it. You did it. Okay, so we have 1, 2, you see those? 3 and 4. Get my mess out of the way. Look at that. You guys did it. So again, if you're following the pattern I've given you, where we're going to make this into a table topper / wall hanging, you need 4 Christmas trees, but each one is uniquely different. Isn't that cool? From not only the berries, but the pattern placement on the trees. Every one is different. I just love that. So I hope you had as much fun today as I did making these Christmas trees. So I hope you subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it because it allows me to do what I do for you. And I truly thank you for that. Also click the bell notifications. That way you're notified every time I upload a video. And click the like button while you're there because YouTube likes to see if people like the video. I'm excited for the next block, so I hope you come back. Stay tuned here on Jolly Molly TV, where next time we will do another block. This will be a house block in Kimberbell's Candy Cane Lane bench pillow / wall hanging / table topper project. I hope to see you soon. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.